right, we're back. How was everybody's coffee break? Are we caffeinated? Are we energetic? Next up on the stage here at Cosmoverse is Jack Zampolin from Sommelier Finance, if I can even say that word. And this is an AMA, and Jack said you can ask him anything, and I mean anything. So, Jack, take it away.
Thank you, Cody. I appreciate that. Hey everybody, my name is Jack Zampolin. Many of you know me from various Cosmos things. Right now, I'm working primarily on Sommelier Finance, which is right now the easiest way to add liquidity to Uniswap 3, and very soon an advanced decentralized asset custodian. In addition to that, I also run validators at Strangelove Ventures, and we work on a couple of community projects, the Go Relayer, some validator infrastructure called Horcrux, and things like Prop 34, which helped to bring Cosmoverse to life through the Hub community pool. I'm active in governance on a bunch of different Cosmos chains, and I'm here to answer your questions. So if anyone has questions for me, happy to answer those. And yeah, happy to talk about any of that work. Yes? What is one of the biggest obstacles moving forward with IBC and bringing in new people? Yeah, I think that's a great question, and thank you, Justin. What's up? Can you repeat the question? Oh yeah, absolutely. What are some of the biggest obstacles to IBC moving forward, and how can we help fix those? So I think that the biggest obstacle to IBC is IBC user experience. When you're moving assets between chains, there's a lot of issues around fungibility, and sort of understandability that make it really hard to build good wallets. Here in Cosmos, we've been kind of running into those issues sooner than a bunch of other ecosystems. That may have slowed us down in some ways, but it's also given us the first exposure to those problems in a real way and allowed us to solve those. So, we see Kepler really pioneering IBC UX in a lot of ways. And the panel right before this, Josh came up and talked about the steps that they're taking to help solve IBC UX, which is fantastic. They need some help, and they need some help from two major directions. One is a chain naming service. So if we think of Cosmos as an internet of blockchains, that internet of blockchains needs some sort of discoverability layer. In the internet, that was called domain naming service. In Cosmos, I think we need to call that a chain naming service. The Osmosis team, again, here is also kind of on the cutting edge of that, and there's a number of other folks like Antoine Herzog from the IOV team who's also working on this, and a bunch of folks from the ICF. But essentially, what I think that the chain naming service should be is essentially DNS on the hub. We need to map chain IDs and human-readable identifiers with a bunch of machine-readable information that serves clients like relayers, wallets, and validators to help them spin up nodes very, very easily. So that is a huge piece of IBC UX that we're kind of missing right now. It's going to be required for Interchain Security v2, as well as a lot of the other products coming out over the next couple of years. And it's going to accelerate the adoption of clients drastically. At Sommelier and Strangelove, we're working with other folks in the ecosystem to try to share that knowledge and to try to bring CNS to life. There's no development team currently working on that, and one of the things that I'm here doing this week is talking to a number of people and trying to get that effort started a little bit more. Another piece of IBC user experience that is sort of in a critical state right now is the relayer infrastructure. I wrote the first relayer implementation, and I've been really active in relaying for the entire time relaying's been a thing. And relaying was initially conceived without fees. There were a lot of issues with adding fees into relaying around how do you value these different tokens? Do you need some sort of external oracle? There's a lot of complexity there. And we decided to ship IBC without support for that. And the thought was that validators and the chain operators themselves would pay for these services out of their own pocket because they have strong incentive alignment to connect their chain to this broader IBC ecosystem. That's essentially what we've seen in a lot of ways, and there's a network of folks like Jacob at Notional, the Tendermint team, the Informal team, and a few other folks who have really stepped up and sort of carried this IBC thing forward. on their own in a lot of ways. But especially as more and more zones are coming on, we're seeing more chains that are saying, hey, we're going to connect to the hub, we're going to connect to Osmosis, and we're going to run those relayers ourselves. That's been helped by relayers getting easier and easier to use. But there's still this huge problem of sort of longer-term incentivization until we land the fee work that is ongoing right now. And what I'm proposing to change that is a relayer DAO. All of these chains that are connected to IBC, most of them have community pools. And all of the communities, and it's a lot of you folks here in this room, and thank you all for coming to Cosmoverse. A lot of those communities really understand the importance of this infrastructure, and at this stage are willing to fund that for the long term. So the plan is to get folks from Informal and Cephalopod Validator and Notional and myself and Tendermint and a couple of other organizations together. We're going to go around and ask these community pools for funding for relayers. And what we want to do is move that into a DAO on Juno and use that to support building out the relayer ecosystem for the next 5 to 10 years and just kind of ensure the stability and support for that ecosystem. So Justin, thank you very much for your question about IBC user experience. I hope I've answered that and happy to dive into any of those topics a little bit more. Anyone else? Yes. Oh, that's a great question. Can you describe the long-term vision of Sommelier? That's a great question. So we're a decentralized asset management platform. So what does that mean? If you think about what asset management is now, you go to a bank and you say, hey, I've got these assets. I need you to manage them, and I need you to give me yield off of those assets. And the bank kind of takes a management fee in return. The simplest way to express what Sommelier wants to do is we want to, as a validator set and as a token holder set, manage assets on a number of different blockchains in a number of different DeFi protocols and take management fees on top of those. Those management fees accrue to the token holders. That looks a lot like a structured products business. That looks a lot like kind of traditional asset management. But what the key difference there is there's no central point of failure. There's no individual that's responsible for that whole system. And the system itself pays for the data that supports these different asset management products, manages and maintains the validator set that custodies those assets, and incentivizes the strategy writers who are writing the strategies on these various chains. So does that answer your question? Awesome. Great. All right. Who's next? Yes.
How will the DAO function?
Which DAO?
The relayer one.
The relayer DAO. Yeah, that's a great question, and this is something that I'm really looking for feedback on. My initial thought is just the functionality of it. So to go and make the community pool requests on these various chains, to fund this thing, we're going to need to put those funds into a multi-sig on that chain and then move it over to Juno via IBC. So to request for a multi-sig, we need like a core group of folks. I've talked about the organizations that I'd like to see involved. Would also love to see Terra involved if they're interested as well. But we get those folks together, and that's kind of the initial core of the DAO. And let's say there's 7 people on that multi-sig. I think initially we should give them sort of like 2 votes in the DAO. So for a total of 14 votes for those 7 folks. And then we should add another 14 relayer operators that are starting to become active. And as this software gets easier to use, there's more and more of these folks out there. And bring those folks into the DAO so that there's this sort of like balance between the sort of historical interest in relaying and the people who are new and bringing in new folks into the relayer ecosystem. And then from there, I think the DAO kind of needs to figure out how to govern itself in some ways, figure out how to add membership, rotate people off the council if needed, and continue to distribute those funds to further the goal of the DAO, which is IBC adoption. Yes, sorry.
That means supporting all IBC chains, relayering.
Yep.
This DAO, right?
Yep. Yeah, and there's some fundamental like dev work that needs to go in. I just learned this week that we have a Cello IBC integration coming out soon. The Hermes team is working hard to support that. Would love to get some support in the Go relayer and TypeScript relayer as well. Substrate-based chains, Solana as well, hopefully via IBC. So, there's a lot of client work that needs to go on there to support those networks. And then in the future, as wallet integrations get better and better, what I really hope to see is users starting to relay their own packets. There's some user experience work that needs to happen before that happens, but it's very, very doable. And funding the development of that work via the DAO is really important. So, yeah. Fetty.
Now that we shipped IBC this year, what are the critical pieces of infrastructure that you are the most excited about?
Now that we shipped IBC, what are the critical pieces of infrastructure that we need to ship next? That's a great question, Fetty. I think that I'm going to come back to chain naming service because that is really a missing piece in IBC. If you look at distributed systems, the service discovery layer is always one of the most critical layers in that system, and it ends up just sort of falling into the core infrastructure. And we kind of forget about it in a lot of ways, but it is critical because if you have a system that's not top down, how do you know where everything is? You've got to ask your peers and then ask their peers. And there's a way to do this. It's called service discovery. And I think that chain naming service abstraction supports a lot of the other things that we want to do with IBC, but is kind of this missing piece that we kind of have this collective mental block of thinking about. The chain registry work that I did at the beginning of the year, and then Sunny and the Osmosis team have picked up, I think is a huge initial part of that. We need to define what are the data structures and what are the data that needs to be in this system. And we can do that on GitHub in a way that's kind of community governed and maintained before we put it on chain. So, I think there's kind of a 2 to 3 step process here where we iterate quickly on the data structures and what data is in there while populating an existing database of this data to help solve this problem in the immediate term, and then put this code on the hub and sell those names and sell that space on the hub to drive value to the hub, continue to maintain centrality of the Cosmos hub within the ecosystem, and support the further growth of IBC. Is that yeah?
Any other one?
Any other one? I think the TypeScript relayer in-browser relaying and wallet support for that is the next really big thing. There's a lot of complexity there around fees because users will need to have tokens on all of the chains that they want to transact on, which kind of sucks. But as we do stuff like normalize validators accepting fees in multiple different currencies on all these chains, having the fee payer abstraction in the SDK that allows, let's say the community pool for one chain to pay for all of people's IBC relaying and stuff like that, that's going to become more and more practical. And those features are just going to roll out over the next 12 to 18 months. And as that happens, I expect to see in-browser relaying pick up significantly because, users can be responsible for relaying their own packets and they don't really have to, So, that's probably my answer on that. Yes, Joe.
Following on from Ben's question.
Yeah.
For me personally, chain accounts is a really exciting feature.
Yeah.
What's ICA enabled protocols and chains you coming over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a great question. And when we get back to the question earlier about what's kind of the longer term vision for Sommelier and this decentralized asset manager, there's a lot of opportunity for Sommelier using interchain accounts to help manage different products on these various IBC chains. I'm really, really excited about that. And I think after this week, talking to everyone about their use cases and kind of what they're working on, interchain accounts is one of those things that just comes up over and over again. So the code's very close to completion. Sean, who works at the ICF, has done a fantastic job with his team to audit, ship, and just continue to make sure that code is excellent. They're kind of undergoing the final stages of audits right now, but the code is roughly ready to go. So we've got a major update coming for the Sommelier chain, probably late this year, early January. And my plan is just to ship interchain accounts with that release. And the thing about IBC is it does take two to tango. So we need another chain to enable that before we can start shipping products with that. But Sommelier can offer some services over interchain accounts as well. We have a functional gravity bridge over to Ethereum, and other chains can call that gravity bridge via interchain accounts. So, I'm hoping that if we launch it, other people will. I've talked to the Osmosis team. They're very keen on this feature as well. The Juno team is very keen on this feature for obvious reasons. I think everyone's really, really excited about it. But all it's going to take is for one use case to take off, and then we're going to see a bunch more. Yeah. Oh, awesome. Yes, absolutely. Gavin, hey. Yeah, thank you.
How can the hub continue to earn its place at the center of
Yeah, so Gavin's question, how can the hub continue to earn its place in the center of the Cosmos ecosystem? So it's Strangelove, one of the things that I've been working on this year is the hub router. And I think that there's been a lot of discussion and kind of conflict around what is the role of the Cosmos hub within the interchain, and how do we stay relevant? If we've kind of given all of our core technology to all of these other chains, what differentiates us? The vision of the hub that is like most exciting for me is this vision of interchain services. B2B is this huge business segment, and DAO to DAO is like this kind of emerging business segment. So can the Cosmos Hub as a DAO make contractual relationships with other blockchains that earns it revenue? And the hub router proposal that I have is the first effort at doing that. The hub can route IBC packets through it to other chains and take a small fee on top of that. For example, there's been a lot of discussion about potentially moving the Gravity DEX onto its own chain. One way we can ensure that the Gravity DEX drives value to the hub is to route all of the IBC traffic to the Gravity DEX through the hub. And in that way, ensure that the hub retains a share of those IBC transactions. So that's one way we can create an economic relationship with another entity. Interchain accounts is another huge one as well, as is interchain staking. But I keep coming back to the CNS thing because it's kind of central to all of these other things. And in addition to driving value to the hub through selling that namespace and maintaining it, it also maintains the hub centrality and mindshare. If the authoritative names come from that place, it is the center, like emotionally for a lot of people. And I think it's important not to undersell that. So yeah, that's what I would say. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So why route through the hub? Pardon? Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you for the reminder. I really appreciate that. Why would chains choose to route through the hub? Relay infrastructure is hard to maintain. And if all you have to do is maintain one connection, it's a lot easier operationally, and it can be cheaper as well. Running all the servers and all that stuff is very expensive. In addition, it's logically easier for a lot of people. You understand who your counterparties are, and the hub is one of those counterparties in that interaction. That routing provides a lot of value to the Gravity bridge, and the hub initially shouldn't take any fees for that, but maybe in the future will. Yeah, absolutely. So we've only got a couple minutes left, so if you've got any questions, get them in now. Yes, sir.
Perhaps a more basic question.
Yeah.
Aside from achieving quorum, what are some other kind of common problems in governance that you would like to see us standardize around, or wave away with a wand if you could?
Absolutely. So what are the biggest problems in Cosmos governance, and how do you think we should solve them? One of the biggest problems is tooling. Honestly, I think anyone who's deeply involved in Cosmos governance will tell you this. It is tough to use right now. The voting times are slow. There's an inability to delegate to smaller subgroups to make quicker decisions. There's an inflexibility in the current token voting system. If you want to have a one token, one vote system, that's really hard to set up. If you want to take more complex actions than, say, just sending money or doing these other things, there's a lot of infrastructure that you need to build into the SDK to ensure that that's functional. So there's a number of efforts underway to change this. The region team has things like fee grant, authz, which allows governance to sort of delegate permission to another account to take actions on its behalf. And more importantly, the groups module, which enables an account to act a lot more like a DAO and do this kind of like one token, one vote type of system. There's also some really exciting work happening from the Juno team called DAO. And what DAO is a series of COSM-WASM smart contracts that enable a number of different sort of DAO paradigms and a series of front ends to support those. And things like a transaction builder to build kind of complex multi-step transactions that the DAO can execute, a UI to do that voting. So yeah, the tooling thing is the biggest. There's a lot of stuff in the work, a lot of stuff in the works. But I think that one thing that it's really important to get to in all of these conversations is we are far ahead of all of the other crypto ecosystems in like real decentralized governance here. You know, there's a lot of decentralization theater and like in all of these other protocols, but like I think we all know here, like Cosmos, like there's a ton of orgs out here. No one really runs anything, and we govern and continue to move this project forward through this decentralized governance system that we have. And like, I think it's really important to like keep coming back to that fact and never forget that like that is actually how this works, and we are kind of pioneers in that area. So, yeah. All right, do I have time for one more? I got time for one more. Awesome. Okay, yes, sir.
So, as a non-technical person, how do you contribute to IBC?
Yeah, as a non-technical person, how do you contribute to IBC in the Cosmos ecosystem? You know, there's a large number of ways to get involved. You know, I think a number of folks in this room are probably investors. That's like the easiest way to get involved. But after that, if you want to get more involved, get into these community spaces on Telegram, on Discord, on Twitter. Make your voice heard. Help support new users. Talk to your friends about this. Bring them into the ecosystem. And you know, I'm looking at two of the best community folks, well, three of the best community folks in the ecosystem sitting right up here up front. They need a ton of help. Go ask them what they need. And you know, if you're more on the business side, there's a lot of Cosmos projects that are going to start to need BD help. You know, Gavin from Figment was asking some questions earlier. Governance is another huge area where you can pitch in. You know, somebody mentioned the difficulty of reaching quorum. The job there is basically contacting all the validators and saying like, hey, would love to have your vote for this. So, you know, all of these sort of interpersonal and community-focused areas are great places to pitch in. And, you know, getting back to the decentralized governance theme, like, it doesn't work without people participating. And, like, doing that is a huge way to contribute to the Cosmos. So, all right, well, this has been a blast. That went way quicker than I thought it would. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Really appreciate it. And this has been fantastic. So come ask me questions. I'll see you guys.